Welcome to the Present Fathers Podcast. This is the show that focuses on climbing the mountain of fatherhood together. We believe that dads matter. That's why this show is for you. So gear up, dads. Get ready. It's time to start climbing. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Present Fathers Podcast. Our guest today is Alex Wassom. We are very excited to speak with him and learn from his experience and just welcome him to the show. So Alex, welcome. How are you, man?
Thanks, guys. I'm great. I'm humbled. I'm honored. I'm grateful. I really appreciate you guys. It's good to be surrounded by great men like yourself. So thank you. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, man. We're really excited to speak with you and learn from your story and kind of share your wisdom with men all out there who are probably struggling with things like we all believe we are. And, I just appreciate upfront, just want to say how much I appreciate your candor and willingness to be open about, your life and the struggles that you've experienced. And so with that, let me give a little bit of a quick bio for you and fill in anything that I miss. But you are the author. You're an author, speaker, and a coach. You're husband and father of 3 girls, right? Three
Yep.
girls. And you help others to overcome self-doubt, anxiety, and depression. And you teach others to become stronger than your pain. You are not alone. So did I miss anything? Is that the high notes?
I think that's the high note, man. Yeah, nailed it. Nice work.
All right. Outstanding. Well, with that, let's go into your background and kind of level set for our audience. All the things that you've been through and what led you to have a passion for helping others today. So is it fair to start in your kind of teenage years with some of those struggles, or do you need to go further back?
No, I think that's really where the struggles began. I think I will start further back just to illustrate that I had a great upbringing. I had and still have fantastic parents, wonderful siblings. I come from a family of 4 boys. My dad had his first marriage, so I have 2 older brothers that are 11 and 13 years older than I am. They were Marines and instilled a lot of that mentality in me, which I greatly appreciate. I tried to follow in their footsteps, but I'm the asthmatic in the family. They wouldn't take me,
You got
but
the haircut at least.
that's it. Exactly, man. They
Could have
smacked me
fooled
around
me.
and yeah. So I come from a great background. I've got a great younger brother as well. That is a wonderful example to me of what it is to be a man. And the reason that I say that is because a lot of people that experience trauma in their lives had a much rougher upbringing than I did. And my upbringing really, I thought was going to put me on a trajectory that I would say I'm more in line with now. And I think what led to my demise in my teen years, and I'll get to that in a second, really was on me. And that's what I teach. That's what I preach. And that's what I've recognized now, having gone through it and looking backwards, right? Hindsight is 2020. But I wanted to start with that because, man, I'm grateful for the upbringing that I had. And I didn't have a lot of struggles. I was given as many opportunities as anybody could. And yet I still experienced a suicidal depression, right? So it doesn't really matter where you come from, how good life is. It could always happen. We have to recognize that it's on us to prevent that, right? So I'll start there. And if we jump to my grandmother, she moved out from Texas when I was roughly 10 years old. My dad did that. He is an amazing father, an amazing man, and a wonderful example to me of what it means to take care of the family. He moved his parents out from Texas so that he could take care of them. And I learned a lot about the importance of family through his example. When he married my mom, he told her straight up, this is a package deal, right? You get me, you get my family. And that comes with my 2 boys. That comes with my parents, as crazy as they may be. You get them if you want me. And so again, a great example to me of what it meant to be a good father and man in general. So we spent a lot of time with my grandparents. They lived in the town next to us. I grew up in Northern California in Pleasanton. They lived in Dublin, 10 minutes away. We spent every weekend with them. And my grandmother and my grandfather, but for some reason I attached to my grandmother a lot. She was wonderful to me. I loved her so much, still do. And she, for some reason, she just ingrained on me, and Um, she was a really special person to me. And so between 10 and 16, I developed a really special relationship with her. And I remember we were playing at the house in the backyard, playing volleyball or something out in the backyard as family and friends. And she came over. We were having dinner, and I saw a band-aid on her shoulder. I asked her what it was, and she said it was nothing. And in my naivety, I believed her and just went back to playing. Little did I know that it was a death sentence for her. It was stage 4 melanoma, and her being 71, 72 at the time, she said, I'm just going to let it run its course. And 4 months later, she passed away. Um, it was really quick, and I was in a very close physical proximity to her. You know, her being 10 minutes away, we saw her all the time. We were there for her. My parents supported her through her, her passing. Um, and what I didn't recognize at the time was I was very emotionally, mentally, and spiritually close to her as well. That proximity, I think, is really what mattered,
Yeah.
unbeknownst to me at the time. And my parents wanted to make sure that she had a very comfortable passing, and so they brought her into our home, and she passed in their bedroom for like the last week or so while she was on hospice. And I while I grew up Catholic, my dad doesn't believe in anything spiritually. My mom is very spiritual in the sense of energy and all those things, which I respect. That's their beliefs. I have no problem with it. But for me, it wasn't what I needed. As I saw her passing, I started asking these questions of like, oh my goodness, if somebody as wonderful as my grandmother that I love and adore could pass this painfully, what is left for me? What is life going to be like for me if somebody as wonderful as her is going to be tortured this way? And it's not like I necessarily believed in God at that time, but I got angry at God, man. I was so
Yeah.
mad. How could you take my grandmother from me? How could you let this happen to somebody so wonderful? If you're real, you would not allow this. And it started a very negative thought process for
Yeah.
me, and it made me angry in my soul. And so I began to ask these questions. If we're just going to die, what is the point? And I was grasping for some semblance of control as she passed away. And the only thing that I could fathom, because I was asking these questions of, where do we come from? Why are we here? Where do we go after we die? And the answers I was getting from the people around me was, Alex, we're just worm food, right? Like, this is just life, man. Like, you live, you die. That's just what happens. And look, I'm a man of faith now, and I recognize I don't have a knowledge. That could be true. I don't know. I don't believe that. But I recognize that some people do, and that's okay, and that's their thing. But for me, it was not the answer that I needed at 16, trying to figure out what was the purpose of life. And as I couldn't find those answers, what I grasped for in control was, if the point is just to die, I can control the timeline of that. And so it led to a very suicidal depression, flirting with that line of death, trying to control, okay, you know what? I'm going to tempt the reaper. I'm going to put this on, in front of him. And eventually that led to putting blade to flesh and getting to that. But fortunately, I was walked in on by my girlfriend, who's now my wife, that stopped me before I got anywhere close to finalizing the act. But she came in and helped me clean up my arm and everything when it got to that point of me getting ready to make the final decision. Um, and when she walked in and I saw the look of horror on her face, that was kind of the rock bottom for me of realizing like something has to change. Right. I saw
Yeah.
myself almost as an out of body experience from her perspective. And I finally recognized that while I held no value for myself and none of this made sense to me, she saw value in me.
Right.
She saw that I was worth something. And it was when I grasped that, it was like, oh, dude, I got to figure this out. I am way off. I have no idea what I'm doing. And that was kind of the turning point for me of I need to fix myself.
Right.
Right. Cause
How old were you when that happened?
so my grandmother passed when I was 16. I was going through that suicidal depression for a few years. My wife and I, high school sweethearts, we started dating our senior year in high school. So I was 18. So yeah, it was probably 2 years later after this had started. I was about 18.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's pretty young to be
Yeah.
considering that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's something that I would just tell young men and women, right? Being a girl dad, I want to include them, but
Mhm.
give these things time, right? Like
Yeah.
you can't have it all figured out at that age. I'm 33 now, and I'm nowhere near having it all figured out, let alone at 18.
Yeah.
Right.
Give it time.
When you had the trauma of losing your grandmother, did you feel alone? Like you were suffering alone? Like there was almost a sense of nihilism from what you explained.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that was part of it. Um, Everybody else was fine. I looked around and I couldn't wrap my head around it. And I looked at
Mm.
my dad who just lost his mom, and him being a stronger man than I am, moved on just fine. And he was okay with that, right? He just recognized it was part of life. My younger brother moved on just fine. He was hurting, but he was okay. My older brothers, same thing.
Mhm.
Everybody seemed to be okay with it. And as I looked around, I just thought, how can everybody be okay with this? And so as I told people like, hey, I'm struggling with this, and they would say, why? It's just part of life. It's okay. I
So it was
did
like
feel alone.
dismissive. They were very
Yeah.
dismissive, really. Yeah.
Yeah. And even if they weren't, which I don't think that they were, I took it that way
Right.
because I was in so much pain that Brandon, to your question, I did feel alone. Which then led me to further isolate myself and turn from people. Nobody
Right.
understands me, so I'm not even going to bring it up.
Right. It's an
Right.
existential crisis, and I have to face it alone.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Just keep
And if nobody's
spiraling.
going to understand me, then I'm not going to bring it up anymore. I'm
I
just
can
going
just
to
deal
face
with it
this
myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that same loop right there that you just described, that happens to so many people, regardless of how old you are. Um, and
Yeah.
so
And I
that, I
would
mean,
say
that's
regardless of that situation.
yeah, I mean, that's the scary thing about it is, like you said, you isolate. Oh, no one's gonna understand me, and you just keep telling yourself this story that's completely not true. And I'm
Yeah.
really thankful that you had that kind of almost outer body experience where you saw it from, at the time your girlfriend, your wife's point of view, of clearly she valued you, and it kind
Mhm.
of snapped you from that. But not everyone is that fortunate to kind of have that experience. So I guess from
Yeah.
there, then you said that was your rock bottom. What was the turning point? Like what did getting better look like for you?
Yeah. It's always hard when you realize how far down you've fallen, right? And I'm a big believer in everything is on you as the individual, right? The extreme ownership, it's your responsibility, it's within your control, and therefore it is your responsibility. And so first it took me realizing like, dude, you are a mess. Like you're a burden right now. Like you are hurting not just yourself, but people around you. Like forget about yourself for a second and just recognize the pain that you're causing your family, the pain that you just instilled in your girlfriend. Like recognize you got a problem. And by the way, suicide, not going to solve it, gonna make it worse. And it took that kind of recognition for me to say, okay, pivot point, right? Uh, the the mentality that you have that causes the problem is not the same mentality that you need to solve the problem. So change the mentality. And that ultimately led to me trying to look around and see, okay, what does this mean? What does being a good person look like? Who are some people that I admire that I could turn to and say, I want to be like that person? How does that person how did they become that person? What makes them good? What kind of characteristics do they embody? What virtues do they have? What does their moral compass look like? And that wasn't my parents at the time, although it probably should have been. But being 18, I was rebellious, and I pushed against them, right, as every 18-year-old does. Let alone the one who had run away from home for a couple of months, before he tried to kill himself. Like I didn't look to my parents, and one of the big people that I looked to, of course, was my girlfriend, who was very strong in her faith. And so that was kind of the first thing that I turned to was I started studying the faith that she was a part of, Christ, I was familiar with him. So I leaned into that. I looked into Buddhism. I looked into different philosophies and started studying those things to see, hey, what does this all mean? Right? Like, let's read the scriptures. Let's study stoicism. Let's look at samurai bushido code. Let's look at what it means to be a good man across the board and just start soaking things in. I had to stop looking inward at all the pain I was experiencing, and I had to turn it outward and say, what is everybody else doing? Because obviously I'm doing it wrong. And it was months of study. I mean, I like you, Brandon, you said that you're a constant learner. I am too. I wake up every morning and I continue to study because I recognize that if I stop moving forward, I will resort back to my default, and I do not like my default setting. And so that process of exploration, philosophical and spiritual exploration, is really what led me to recognize that, hey, Alex, even if you don't feel like you have any value personally, there's a larger power out there that thinks you do, right? That holds you in very high regard. And the people that had the belief in that higher power also recognize your potential. So if you don't feel like you're worthy enough to live up to your own standards, recognize where they see you and aim for their perspective. And while I don't think that that is necessarily the end all be all approach to self-help, self-actualization, self-mastery, we cannot borrow other people's perspectives of us in the long term. It is a great short-term tool to get yourself out of a rut. How do other people see me? What value do I bring to other people? What potential do they see in me? How can I grasp that perspective? And then how can I create a plan to live up to it? And that's really what it came down to. I hated myself, but other people loved me. And I needed to understand why, what they saw in me, and how I could start working towards that. And that's really what helped me turn a corner.
That's so deep. I love that. I feel like death has such a finality, especially when it's a loved one, and you don't understand the gravity of that until you see it firsthand. And I feel like we're all canvases with plastic protective covering. And when we experience that finality face to face, it's like that plastic stripped off and now we can paint, right? And so in my own life, I dealt with that with my grandmother as well. And it was like such an existential crisis for me as well. And I did a lot of soul searching for the next 4 or 5 years. And it was tough, man. And I realized that if I didn't fix that trauma when I had kids, that was going to be their battle. And I wasn't going to allow that to happen. And so I can relate to that so much, man. There's so much gravity to that. But I love that you are externalizing towards what other people and how other people treated you, because I look at it now with kids. How do I treat my children? I should treat myself to that same standard, right?
That's
And
good.
a
Amen.
lot of people don't do that, and they're harsh and they're self-critical, and there's these negative thought loops that just continuously happen. And it's like, treat yourself, love yourself the way you love your children.
Because if you don't, that pours out on them, right? All that
Right.
negativity is going to spill out.
Right.
So that actually segues really good talking about kids. So fast forward now, Alex, you've done a lot of work, obviously, being a father now. You said your oldest is 5. Is that correct? You've been a
Correct.
dad for about 5 years now. So you're like, what, 27, 28 when that happened? So how
Yeah.
different, how has becoming a father changed your mindset or changed your understanding of trauma and the importance of doing the work to heal and to move past it?
Yeah. I mean, Brandon said it perfectly. So quick answer, ditto, Brandon. We could move on from there. But if, diving deeper, um, I recognized that my pain needed to be used purposefully. And if I didn't, I would take that out on my kids unknowingly. And being a father, I teach my kids life is hard. Like there is inevitable pain that is going to come. You cannot avoid it. Suffering, on the other hand, is a decision, because suffering is the resistance against reality. It's fighting that this shouldn't be happening to me. Why me? Why is this happening? That is where suffering comes from. And that is what I experienced when my grandmother passed away. And as I had kids and I started to recognize, oh man, what would I teach them if I saw them going through this situation, right? I pulled myself out and become what I call a subjective spectator, right? Put myself in that third party perspective and say, Alex, how would you in a third party teach your children to get through this? It's like, man, I would have approached it totally different had I had that perspective. And now I get the opportunity to do that again to help them recognize life is not sunshine and rainbows. As much as my kids love rainbows, it is not filled with that. Like life is hard, and it is purposefully that way so that we can learn these lessons. And we need to change that perspective and reframe to say, rather than why me, try me, right? I can handle this. And that's where the stronger than your pain comes from, right? And it's funny that the way that came to be was my 5-year-old was running around the house. She banged her knee, and we were kind of like, okay, let's do our breathing exercises. Let's slow things down. And it just kind of came out, sweetie, you're stronger than your pain. It's okay. And I was like, whoa, I'm holding on to that.
That's great.
And because it is so much more than just that physical act, it's the spiritual, mental, emotional, stronger than your pain. And I wish I had recognized that back then. So now, in a very long-winded answer, you'll find I'm a long-winded kind of guy. I have the
Podcast, all
opportunity.
good.
Yeah, exactly. No 90-second reel on
Even pay for
Instagram,
that
right?
here.
You should see George and I when we get passionate about something.
Cool, man. Yeah, we'll dive
It'll
in.
probably happen later.
Good. I look forward to it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to
But
throw you off.
no, you're good. Having kids really allowed me to say, Alex, redo, right? Like, yeah, your kids are going to experience a lot of the similar things. If you look at common humanity, we're not that different. Yes, our experiences may be different, but the underlying pain and trauma that we all experience is the same. So even as 3 to 4 or 5 years old, teach them how to handle it. Help them with that reframe, give them that perspective, and allow them to say, yes, this hurts, and recognize your feelings, but don't let them dictate, right? You're the one in charge, right? Feel them. I love the saying, and I'll PG it. Feel your shiz, acknowledge your shiz, but don't lose your shiz, right? Like, I lost mine for years, and I lost myself in it. And like, even when my kids bang their toes now, it's like, hey, feel it, acknowledge it, recognize it's hurt, but don't go screaming and throwing punches and getting even more angry simply because you're in a little bit of pain. Don't make it worse like I did, right? So now I have the opportunity to shift that, and it's all because of kids. It really is. Fatherhood is the hardest but most beautiful thing in my life.
It's pretty amazing being a dad. I think so. Growing up, you don't really pay attention, but as you get older, and especially when you become a parent, you realize how important mentors and just life lessons are. And then just like now, even like the smallest thing, like Bluey, I'm watching it the other day, and Bandit's like talking to Bluey, and he's like, "It's a good thing you're tough," and he keeps banging it home. It's a good thing you're tough. And Bluey's like, it's a good thing I'm tough, and like that's like what you said earlier, when you have your own like mantras or the things that you believe in and you want to practice with the children, eventually like it just becomes natural for not only for you but for them. And it was funny. We were having this conversation, my wife and I, the other night. We were watching Ted Lasso. I'm a huge fan of that show.
Classic. Oh yeah.
Oh God, so good. Jason Sudeikis, it's perfect.
Yep.
But he said in that, a good mentor hopes you move on. A great mentor knows you will. And I think that can be perceived for a lot of different things like pain and anger and frustrations and traumas and things like that. And so that's just something I wanted to share, was just like mentorship and just the little things that you come across in your life. We get to be that person that teaches our children that and instill that in them. And it is the coolest thing. You don't really realize it until you're there and you're actually doing it. And you're like, wow. All right, I get to hold the reins now. I get to change things. Like Brandon said, I want to break this, generational thing, or I want to break, these problems I had growing up. So I think
that's why it makes it so important to teach them the greatest source of hope, right? Like I teach my children about Christ and about God, and it's like, that's where they're going to get their hope. And when things get tough and they look back, and they realize that was God preparing me for this moment. And that was God preparing me for this. But that was also God letting me know, hey, I got you. And this is where I had you. And this
Or
is where
so
I had
you
you
can
here.
use that for someone else,
Yeah.
you know?
And so sometimes we suffer so that we can be the light and the help and the lamp for others. And I suffered immensely in my teenage years through a lot of loss and a lot of friends who commit suicide. But it really helped me prepare my children and my wife for depression and for tough times in life, right? And it makes it so much more beautiful. It's so strange, like I don't know, you get to think so much more deeply, and so you're so much more involved in everything because you know that you're all in this life. So
I think that's beautiful, man. I think that that is absolutely one of the things that I try and teach my kids now. And honestly, that saved me was that there is purpose in your pain. And I am a huge believer, proponent of we are spiritual beings experiencing a physical lifestyle, right? And one of the things that I resort back to was, when my grandmother passed away and I was so angry at God, right? Or whatever that power was, because back then I didn't necessarily believe in God, right? So universe, life itself, whatever. I was angry, not recognizing that I needed this trial to create me into the man that I am. And now being, man of faith in Jesus and all that, I look at what he went through for us. And part of the perspective that I maintain, and I don't mean to make this a Sermon on the Mount, so redirect me if you want, but if I'm to relate to him at all, shouldn't I have to experience just a little bit of trauma and a little bit of pain myself?
Yeah.
Otherwise, how would I have any appreciation for what he went through? And as I keep that in mind, the quote by Epictetus, which has kind of been my quote for 2023, if it's endurable, endure it, stop complaining, comes to mind. It's like, man, he went through so much for me. I can handle this. Like, this is fine.
Yeah.
Right. Just to be able to relate to him. And then I take that perspective to us men, right? If I didn't have any pain, if life was all sunshine, rainbows, unicorns, and you came to me and said, Alex, I'm having a tough time, I'd be like, I don't know how to help you, dude.
Exactly.
Like, my life is fantastic. And I don't think that that is the purpose. I
Right.
don't think that that is how we bond. I mean, especially us as men, we bond through trials. We don't sit around the
Yep.
table and talk and emote, as sometimes we need to. We need to emote sometimes, and that's okay. But we bond through, hey man, I'm going through a tough time. And you're like, dude, me too. Nice. Like, let's embrace the suck together. And we grow from it because we're solution-driven animals. That's
Yeah.
what we seek after.
We
And
had
so
a guest
recognizing
we had a
that is
guest
important.
earlier make a really great distinction. Men don't do face to face. We do this shoulder to
Yeah,
shoulder.
shoulder to shoulder.
We need something to work towards together, and
Love that.
that's how we bond. And that's and but to your point too, if you've never experienced anything, if you've never had any hardship, how can you have empathy? Because empathy is feeling the same thing that they're feeling.
Yep.
It's getting down in the pit with that person and not saying, "Oh, just get out of it," or "Here's a ladder." It's sitting in there with them for a little bit and then helping them realize, "Hey, I've got a ladder. We can leave." You know, um,
Yeah.
sympathy is just yelling down at the person, "Oh, that's terrible," and then walking away from the pit. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting distinction between the two. I think most people in our culture today think that sympathy is empathy, and there's a big difference. You need to be able to find that common ground with a similar experience that you've had to that exact pain that that person's feeling, and theirs may be a lot worse, but you can respect what it is that they're feeling and try and put yourself in that position. Um, and depending on the severity of the situation, be the right level of, because sometimes they just need you to sit there with them and
Yeah.
say nothing. Right?
And
Loss of a loved one, that's kind of that situation. Arm around them, just sit there. Maybe if it's
that's
a
it,
smaller
man.
thing, there's a little bit of coaching involved or whatever, right? But if you've never experienced anything, you can't match the situation.
Yeah. I love the way that Brene Brown differentiates sympathy versus empathy, because I think empathy is a superpower. And, in my purpose that I have written on my board and that I resort back to, I make sure that I include that empathy because, man, we need it. And Brene Brown differentiates sympathy as kind of like, oh, that's really hard, but it could have been worse. I don't know why you're complaining.
It's dismissive.
It is.
Yeah.
It's absolutely dismissive. Whereas empathy is very involved, right? And it's filled with love. And I think that is the superpower that we need to use more. It's just like, man, I may not have the answer for you, but I can share in your pain and let you know
Right.
you're not alone. And I promise you, I'll help you figure this out as long as it takes.
Yeah. I butchered the example, but I got it from Brene Brown on like one of
Oh,
her
perfect. Yeah.
examples. So yeah, I was
No, I think it's great because you're right.
yeah.
Looking down in the hole, it's like, build a ladder, stupid. Get
Yep.
yourself out. You'll be fine.
But and I'll say this too, is I'm someone who's like really never ever struggled with depression. A couple months ago, man, I get it now. Like it's not a choice. Like I just woke up. I I was completely blindsided, and man, I couldn't even like find words to say to my wife. Like she's like, "What's wrong?" Because she was like freaking out a little bit too. Like, whoa, this is not like him. Um, I get it now. Like so much, I have so much more empathy now for people who are just like struggling for real because you don't really have control over it in the moment. And so that whole thing of like, oh, here's the ladder, just crawl right out. They would just look at the ladder anyway and be like, I just can't right now. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
gained a level of understanding for it and empathy for it. Um, just totally shocked me out of nowhere. So like, I think a lot of people's natural reaction is just be like, oh, we'll just get over it because they think they're kind of faking or something. And I'm sure that
Yeah.
people abuse it to get pills or whatever else, but that's probably the minority, not the majority of people who are actually struggling. Brandon, go
Yeah.
ahead.
I can tell you that the more empathetic somebody is, that is an immediate telltale to me that that person has experienced more trauma and more suffering in their life than most. Like the more empathy they express, the more I know they've been through trauma, and that's almost an immediate sign for me um, when I'm talking to anybody, whether they're somebody I've known for ages or somebody that's new. And I'm a highly empathetic person because I was a very strong people pleaser when I was young, and being ADHD and getting yelled at, and you learn to read people's behaviors and emotions, and then you adhere and keep yourself safe within those people's lack of emotion, right, or lack of control of emotion. And so yeah, empathy is a huge one for me. But my question for you, Alex, is what are some common signs or behaviors that you see that indicate a person might be grappling with like depression, self-doubt, those kind of things?
Yeah, I think one of the big ones is forced isolation, right? And having the perspective of I just don't want to share. You won't understand me, right? You won't get it. It's like, yeah, try me. I think I've been there before. Um, I think that's a behavioral pattern that we can recognize is they start pulling away. They stop showing up. They stop communicating. Um, I think a big one that I recognize in myself as well as those that I'm close with is a shift in energy. Um, and I'm not necessarily talking like spiritual energy, which I do believe happens, but I'm talking like it's hard to get out of bed. Like George, you mentioned, like I just woke up and I was like, oh man, I'm lethargic. I have brain fog. Motivation is not enough to keep you moving. And so recognizing if you're somebody that loves going to the gym and your behavior shifts to like, I don't know, man, I just don't want to. It's like, oh, that's a red flag. Like if you stop liking the things that you typically like doing, let's dig into that a little bit. And let's recognize that maybe not as a red flag, but a yellow at least. And say, what where do you think this is coming from? Why do you think you're experiencing that? I think that those are some of the early telltale signs that
Mm,
we can begin to recognize before they turn red. And
mm,
I know you guys have some questions, and I wanted to share one thing in regards to depression, especially on the red flag piece. When you're going through that depression, I like to imagine it this way: you're sitting in a really dark room by yourself, door closed, and a lot of people think if you just throw the door open, you grab the person, you pull them out into the light, that all of a sudden they're going to feel better. But you don't realize that when you've been sitting in that dark room for a long time, that light actually hurts. It's blinding. You don't want to see it anymore because it's just too much, too fast. And so when you're sitting in that dark room, the way that people need to handle that is slowly crack the door open. Don't bring a flashlight, bring a candle. Let that little bit of light acclimate you to what the light is outside. Then slowly guide that person to the door. Let them open that door and let the rest of that light in. Because if you throw that door open and the light's going to blind them again, they're going to resort back into that darkness, right? So when we're going through these things, and George, to your point, your wife's like, "Oh my gosh, what do we do? Like, he's never been this way. Let me throw the door open and let's go out and do all the things that he loves to do."
I mean, she was
right?
pretty
Out of
well
love.
reserved, but I think she was like, she knew something was wrong for real.
Yeah.
Because like
I know that my wife will do that. She's like, "Alex, let's go do what do you need? Let's go do all the things you love."
Yeah.
And I'm like,
no, she wasn't trying to fix. She gave me my space that I needed and stuff, but
That's awesome.
we've done a lot of work on this kind of thing, but
That's awesome.
I think she was pretty concerned because
Yeah. And rightfully so.
she was like, "I've never seen you like this," you know?
Yeah.
So she did kind of come
Behavior
back
change.
hours later and was like, "I mean, do you need some help?" And I was just like, "I don't."
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry.
Well,
I don't. I'm just
no,
trying to give her
no
credit.
worries.
She handled the
Yes.
situation extremely well.
That's
Well,
awesome. Credit where
I
credit
was
is
not
due.
handling it well.
Yeah.
Well, the way I've always kind of, so for those of us who have struggled with depression our whole lives, I'm definitely one of them. I've always kind of felt it as kind of like the tide. It comes and goes. And to your point with the light and the darkness, it can also be one of those things where, it can either drown you or it can leave you high and dry, and it doesn't matter where you're at, you're still feeling the way you feel, and not a lot in the environment and not a lot outside of anything can really change that, other than just you taking yourself out of that situation or out of that environment on your own time and on, like you said, your own free will and at your own pace. And like you said, sometimes people like to just try to throw you that buoy or that lifeline and pull you right out of that water, but that's just not how it works. And honestly, to touch what Brandon was saying, the empathy thing, excuse me, to those who aren't empathetic about it, when they try to just tell you like, "Oh, just be a man," or "just suck it up," or "do this," it makes it 10 times worse. If anything, that actually creates anger, and it creates resentment towards those people. And that's something else we bury. If you're a person who's depressed, you bury your feelings more than likely. So you'll bury rage, you'll bury anger. And the only thing that I found personally for me that has really pulled me out of that is music. I love to get lost in music, especially like NF, somebody who's been through something. Oh God, his story. I listen to his music and the story about his mother and the mansion and him being stuck in his own mind. And it's like, I thought I had some problems. They're nothing, man. Like, and then we've had some fathers come on here with some pretty crazy stories and harsh realities. And you start to find gratitude. Now, I've said this before on the podcast, but I feel like gratitude is the number one way out of depression. When you realize that you only have the one life and all the people and things around you are absolutely incredibly amazing, and you really truly embrace that, that's when you're like, okay, I may be depressed, but I have an awesome wife. I have an amazing son. I have a nice house. I have a nice car, or, whatever makes you happy, whatever fulfills you in life. I have a great job. And I think it comes down to what Gary V has said. He said, gratitude is the attitude, man. And that's it. Gratitude really is about the only thing, that and music, that can kind of help you to get out of that place. So just wanted to share that.
Yeah. In podcast, like gratitude. That's it. Like, all right, guys, it was great. That's it.
All right, good night.
So true.
Yeah. Good night. Thanks.
Yeah.
Keep on, dads.
So I want to make a couple points as well, Alex. And kind of maybe we'll do one at a time. I'd like you to respond and then come back. So rapid fire here a little bit. So number one,
please.
you're talking about red flags and things like that. So for those who may be listening and may not be aware of this, if someone is struggling with suicide ideations or contemplating actually going through with it, you cannot put the idea in their head. So you asking, "Hey, are you thinking about killing yourself?" is not going to make them go do it. In fact, that's actually going to probably stop them from doing it because they go, "Oh my gosh," they get it, So I've actually done quite a bit of training I actually did a suicide like intervention training class through the military when I was active duty. It was
That's
extremely
awesome.
eye opening, really, really good course that I did. But I've actually had to use that for real, thankfully, that I was able to kind of intervene. Um, ask the hard questions. Like if you were,
Mhm.
so Alex is kind of talking about some things, if someone is not doing the things that they typically enjoy or they're acting a little off, you need to ask those hard questions, as scary as that may be. Because if you don't, they may go through with their plan or they may progress their plan. And that's how it works. And it seems kind of counterintuitive because, like, oh, well, I'm planting that seed. It doesn't work that way. They've probably
Mm-mm.
already planted the seed themselves anyway. And by you directly intervening, directly calling out what's really going on in a loving, caring way, will at least start the conversation for them to be open to not doing it, because otherwise that door stays shut. So, have you experienced that, or have you learned that in all of your work, Alex, or anything you want to add that I maybe didn't miss? Because I think that's a pretty big distinction that a lot of people don't realize.
I think, in my research and studies around suicide, that's exactly it. Right? You had asked a question in preparation for this podcast, what is the thoughts, words, actions all the way to destiny? And I want to dive into that. That's what I call the mastery cycle. Long story short, thoughts lead to your destiny. If you are not taking charge of those thoughts, if you are not verbalizing those thoughts with positive words to gain control of them, to then lead to positive actions, those thoughts will dictate your destiny. And that is where I find myself. My thoughts were so negative. They led to the negative outcome because I felt nobody understood me. And when I did share those things, I felt as if I was being pushed back into a corner because nobody could relate to me. Everybody thought I was crazy. So I stopped sharing those thoughts. That isolation then allowed me to further my plan. And so, George, to your point, we need to ask those hard questions. We absolutely do, because we need to stop and interfere that negative thought process. And we need them to verbalize it, because oftentimes what makes sense in our heads as we verbalize it out loud does not make any sense. And we're like, oh man, I can't believe that I actually thought that. Like, I say it out loud and I hear myself say it. It doesn't sound as good as I thought it did. And so being able to, again, going back to the empathy, hey man, what's going on? Are you having these thoughts? Because I've been there before. You're not alone. If you are, let's talk about it. Let's interject ourselves in between and try and grab some control of those thoughts and recognize it's probably not going to play out like you think it will.
Yeah.
And so interfering with that thought process allows you to grab more of the control and recognize that, this is not the way that I thought that this was going to go. So you're spot on. That is the exact same thing that I have seen in my research and my studies. Is you got to get ahead of it. Don't be afraid
Yep.
to have the conversation.
Right.
Yeah. And Alan Watts talks about that so eloquently. He talked about a person who thinks all the time. They have nothing to think about except for thoughts. And so he
Mhm.
loses touch with reality and he lives in a world of illusions. And like everything else, it's useful in moderation. It's a good servant, but it's a bad master. And
Mhm.
so we have to not be people who are slaves to our own thought processes and our overanalyzation. And I was a victim of overanalyzation, and sometimes I still am. But it's great. And I want to specify this point with the suicide ideation. So there's a difference between ideation and intent. If
Mhm.
somebody's expressing intent, you are absolutely going to have to intercede
Yeah. It
immediately.
means imminent. Yeah. They're
Yes,
gonna
it
do
means
it,
they've planned, it's in their head, they're going to do it.
and if they
Whereas
have the means, yeah.
ideation's more of the yellow flag to the red flag,
Right.
right? Like you were saying earlier. And so ideation means that person is struggling, they need help, they need the empathy, they need the support, whatever they kind of intervening that you can give them. But yeah, intent is a whole nother animal. That's you really got to intercede for that person.
Yeah.
So
That's where you call them on the phone. If they don't answer, you call like a health and welfare check on their house. Like you have
Yeah,
to
you
do
go over.
something. Yeah,
yeah,
you got to go overboard in that moment, because yeah, that's
yeah,
like so I have a real world example. I'm gonna keep it anonymous to protect the innocent, but got a message, "Hey, I love you, goodbye," or something. It was super abrupt like
Mm.
that. And it was like, whoa, okay. Dial, 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 like 20 times till they picked up the phone. Finally, they picked up the phone. It was like, I don't know what you're thinking or what you're gonna do, but don't do it. Don't hang up the phone. You have to be like that abrupt about it if it's to the point of intent. So We could probably do a whole
Yeah,
episode
great
on
point.
just that topic. I don't want to get too bogged down on that because I know, Alex, you have a whole bunch of other things I want to get to that you have expertise on. But the other quick little point I wanted to make about empathy is I think it's arguably the most important thing you need to learn as a father.
Mhm.
I naturally am not good at empathy. That was not a strong suit for George going into marriage and then becoming a dad. But man, working on empathy and growing that muscle, the empathy muscle, has been probably the most valuable tool in terms of just having genuine connection with both my wife and my daughter. And I just can't stress that enough for all the dads out there that just because you have the authority over your family and you're the head of the household and stuff doesn't mean you're a tyrant. And empathy is kind of that bridge between I'm in charge and I'm like leading us and everything, but I'm also, hey, my 5-year-old child, you skinned your knee. Like I can remember what it was like to, what I mean? It's pulling yourself out of that position as head and leader or whatever and being there in the moment. So just if that's a weak point for you listening, take that to heart. Hopefully this helps you realize how important it is, but it's a tool that you will use the rest of your life anyway with everyone that you interact with. And it's probably the least, I would say the most underrated skill, um, especially for men. We
Thank
hone in
you,
on other
especially
things.
for
I
men.
think for men, uh, mastering empathy or at least getting pretty good at it is like a superpower because it's just naturally what people don't expect from men. If you're able to do it, it really is a very versatile thing that you can apply to a lot of situations. So
Yeah. Wow.
tie that in there with the fatherhood thing.
I was gonna say for anybody who's going through it and they're close to intent. I mean, you feel the panic of that just infinite darkness and depth, and you just feel like there's no way out. There's two things you need to remember. You need to remember to take the words that you're saying about yourself and turn it like the opposite, like you were saying, Alex. But you need to remember the word temporary. There was a study done on suicidal patients that I read one time, and it stated that anybody who thinks the word temporary in a black part of their brain, and you see a white word that says temporary, it automatically triggers your brain to like kind of do a hard reset and stop and think, this is temporary. It automatically makes you think this is temporary. And if you just remember that, this too shall pass, if you're religious, you just need to remember, like, everything is temporary. 10 years down the road, your life, 1 month down the road, your life can be completely different. And there always is a way out. So I just want to offer that hope for those who feel like there's not a way out. And it could be a situation with a divorce. It could be a situation with a baby's mama trying to take your children. I mean, there's so many endless circumstances that can literally put you in that depth. But you got to remember there's always a way out of it, and it's only temporary. So that's just something I wanted to offer there.
All right, Alex,
Amen, dude.
closing thoughts on this topic, and I want to move on to kind of your program and all the different elements.
I think it's a good segue because my next question would be, okay, we've recognized all the problems. Now, how do you
Right.
face them?
Exactly.
Right.
Okay, perfect.
So,
So if you're ready for that, so I
yeah,
know
let's
you
go.
on your website you talk about the power of fitness, the power of nutrition, and the power of mindfulness. So let's start with mindfulness. I think it's probably the best segue here, and I think that leads in also to your how thoughts lead to destiny. So,
Yeah.
how do you define mindfulness? I guess to level set.
Yeah. You had asked me that in your email, and I was like, ooh, that's a really good question. Cause you could look at the definition in a dictionary, but everybody kind of has their own perspective. Right. And if I were to try and put one word around mindfulness, it would be present. And then again, if I try and reverse engineer, okay, what allows you to then be present? I think that, there's a lot of things that go into it, but one of the things that going off of the pillars of, the fitness and nutrition and everything else that goes into that, one of the quotes that I had heard that really stuck with me was that if you want to be present, you have to be proud of your presence. So if you want to be in the moment, if you want to be in tune with the people that you're with, if you want to be attentive to your children, if you want to be mindful of your wife, you have to be proud of who you are or else you're going to be thinking about all the things that you're not good at. You're going to be thinking that you're going to be projecting everybody else's image of you, your insecurities. This person is thinking this of me. There's another great quote of, I'm not who I think I am. I'm not who you think I am. I am who I think you think I am. There is nothing about that is present, right? That is so lost in your mind, and it pulls you away from being present. And I think if we're to be truly mindful, we have to be present, which takes a lot of work. To be proud of your presence, to say, I am a good man, and therefore I'm okay with who I am in this situation. I trust myself enough to handle this. I know when I'm going to need to offer a solution versus when I'm just going to need to be empathetic, right? So being mindful, you have to be so situationally aware, so personally aware, so self-aware. You have to be grounded in the present. So I know it's kind of a long-winded answer, but present.
That's really good, man. I like that.
I think
Obviously, we're a little biased to the word present,
yes,
the name of this
right.
podcast, but
I figured, yeah. I was
yeah.
like, this is great, man. I'm going to go with this.
That's it, man. I agree. It's about, for me, mindfulness is maybe it's some disciplines, maybe it's things you do on a daily basis that draw you out of everything that isn't real and honing in on what really I can control, what really matters, right? Of course, there's things that matter, but do they really, I mean, they're temporary things. And kind of honing in on, your life's mission and purpose. And, if you're a dad, that should be including your raising your kids and things like that.
Yep.
So, and then one quick point too, to Rob from James Clear, you talked about motivation earlier. It's not enough to rely on, well, you don't rise to your motivation, you fall to your systems. So I would assume that you have some systems in place that you personally have used and probably recommend to the people you work with about mindfulness. So what is a little sneak peek of that?
Yeah. So that kind of is the segue of like, okay, that's what it is. Now, how do you achieve that? Right. So I'm a big fan of breaking words down to their root, looking at the etymology of where things come from. And again, if we go back to if you are to be present, you have to be proud of your presence. One word that would then encapsulate that is confident. How do you gain self-confidence, right? Because how do you overcome self-doubt? The opposite of that is going to be self-confident. If you break down confidence, it's extreme trust or reliability in something. So as you look at self-confident, you have that extreme trust and reliability in yourself to be able to face what is in front of you, which again allows you to be present. You're not thinking about how you're going to handle something that doesn't matter right now. You're dealing with what's in front of you. So, okay, now we have to ask, how do we gain that self-confidence? And that's going to come down to doing the things that you say you're going to do. So let's, just keeping this on what it is to be a good father, a good husband, a good man. And we can get into fitness and nutrition and all those things too. But we have to have things that we do on a daily basis that help us work towards the outcome of being a good dad. And you as the dad have to define that yourself. But we can paint with a broad brush, right? We are going to be empathetic. We're going to be patient. We're going to be loving. We're going to be service oriented. We have to have that definition that we can then reverse engineer and work backwards from. So I am a huge proponent of having a tracker. Make sure that you know your daily activities that are going to get you to that goal to build confidence in yourself. Because as somebody who deals with depression, and for those of you who are listening that deal with depression, again, motivation is not going to be enough. So if you don't track your progress into something, how are you going to trust that you're doing what you say you're going to do, right? Especially when you're in a rut. So I use a tracker every day, and I'll my things that I do just in the morning to make sure that I square myself off on being a good husband, being a good father. The foundation of being a good man to me is I study my philosophy and scriptures every morning. I journal every morning. I meditate every morning. And part of what that looks like, my journaling, is I do what's called virtue journaling. I lay out how I identify my energy, my work, my love. I define the virtues that I want to embody within those things. And then I define my action for that day. And keeping it oriented on husband and father, when I get down to love, my identification that I use for that is eternal companion. I then go through and I write out all the virtues that I want to embody as that man. I want love. I want empathy. I want patience. I want purpose. I want persistence. I want dedication. I want to be kind. I want to be faithful. I want to be filled with hope. And then I go through and I define what are the actions that I'm going to do for my wife and each one of my kids. And I track it and I can see it on my daily. Did I do it? Did I do it? Did I do it? Because that then, even if I'm emotionally in a rough spot, I can look at my tracker and say, Alex, you may not feel like you're doing a good job, but statistically, you're doing all the things that you know you need to do to get you to the outcome of being the good man that you have defined, because the outcome needs to be an organic byproduct of the process. And so I can define those things. I can then track it and be like, hey, you know what, Alex, you're doing it every day. So don't necessarily give in your feelings, because a lot of the times our feelings are liars, right? If you are going through and you are recording and you're doing all the things that you know you need to do to be a good man, give yourself some grace, give yourself some credit, have a little bit of empathy towards yourself, and then
trust
keep going.
the process.
Trust the process. Yep. And so over time, we began to gain the confidence in ourselves of these are the things I know I told myself I need to do. I'm doing them on a daily basis. I can see that. I do those things in the morning and then I reflect on them at night. Hey, did I live up to the empathy, the kindness, the patience? Did I do the love languages for each one of my kids? Did I play with them? Was I kind? Those things. So as we track those things, it's like using a GPS towards our outcome, right? We can see where that's going. Otherwise you're wandering.
Yep.
And it's really hard to keep yourself on path when you're wandering. It is straight and narrow. It's hard to stay on, right?
Yep.
So sorry, that was a very long-winded answer, but that I think is one of the things that I teach and the tools that I use to help people become confident in themselves, to be present in the moment through gaining confidence in their abilities to not have to deal with anything that's not right here.
Well, if you're tracking too, you can look back and recognize all the wins over time, right? If you're not ever recording it, it's really easy to remember the negatives. We do a really bad job of reminding the positives, right? So if you're marking those down on a consistent basis, you're reminding yourself of all the good that's occurred too. And again, that plays into changing your mindset moving forward. Do you also use backwards planning? Have you heard of that term for kind of more long range type of objectives and goals for yourself?
Yeah.
Where
So I
kind of go to the end state and then you work back from everything that has to occur to get to that point.
Yes. And have you read the book, The One Thing?
I've not. No.
Oh man. It's like my number one book that I would recommend for goal setting.
I'll add it to
Habits
the
is
list.
Atomic Habits. And The One Thing is the same thing, right? Like, hey, this is the man I want to be in 10 years. Describe what that looks like. What is it going to take to become that in 5 years? All the way down to what do I have to do on a daily basis to achieve that? And that's really the importance of tracking, right? Because a really long goal like that, really hard to maintain, right? If that's so far in the future and so many things can get in the way, but you break that down and reverse engineer to a daily action, 100% you'll get it. Just a matter of time.
All right. I'll add the one thing to the list. And for all the listeners out there too, now you have homework.
Yeah, exactly.
So can you go a little bit more in depth into the whole progression of thoughts to words to actions, habits, or have we kind of already?
No,
I feel like
I would
you
love
probably
to
had a
dive
lot more
deeper
on that.
Yeah, so that actually comes to us from Lao Tzu, who's an ancient Chinese philosopher back in 500 BC. So he was the one that said, watch your words, watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. Watch your habits, they become your character. Watch your character, it becomes your destiny. So as I teach the inner or the mastery cycle is what I call it, because as you said, the image on my website, right? You are at the center of this thing. And as you draw this circle around you, that is everything that you encompass. You are your thoughts, you are your words, you are your actions. Ultimately, you're the one in charge of your destiny. You hold in your hands, it's on your shoulders, it's within your control, therefore it's your responsibility. That's on you. Nobody can tell you how to think. Yeah, there we go, right? So your current thoughts are what dictate who you currently are at the center of this. You want to change who you are at the center of this. It starts with your thoughts, right? So George, your question, hey, the reverse engineering planning, who do you want to be in 10 years? Who do you want to be in 3 years? Put that person in the center of this mastery cycle and ask yourself, how would that person think? what would the words would that person use be? How would that person act? And I'm actually creating an online course and a group coaching program to help, especially men, as for men, control those three things, because we don't control our habits on a daily basis. If you think about it, our habits are what happens on autopilot, right? As we control our thoughts, our words, our actions, that then dictates our habits, which dictates our future. So on a daily basis, we have to be very conscious of the decisions that we are making, starting with our thoughts all the way through those words and actions to then dictate what the habits are that then dictate our future. So I'm a big proponent of, and Brandon, I love the way that you said it, right? Our thoughts are good servants, but they're terrible masters. We have to be the ones in control of those, because that feeds our words. And we haven't talked too much about this yet, but Brandon, I think it was you that touched on the empower of self-talk. How would you talk to your kids? Man, how would you talk to a loved one? How would you talk to a friend? For those of you that don't have kids, how would you talk to anybody that you truly care for? Contrast that with how you talk to yourself, because I'll be the first to admit my default setting, I don't like how I speak to myself. I have to be very conscious of the words that I use with myself. Alex, you're a piece of garbage. You're worthless. You're a burden. Nobody wants you around. That self-talk that I experienced during my trauma comes back up consistently. And if I'm not aware of that, man, I go into a deep hole. And so I have to be able to pull myself out and become, again, what I call a subjective spectator and say, Alex, hold on. If you spoke to your wife this way, what would happen? Yeah, she's definitely not going to stick around, right? I'd put my kids in therapy if I spoke to them the way that I speak to myself sometimes. And so that needs to be something that we're consciously aware of, because, the saying of sticks and stones may break my bones, but words may never hurt me. That is true when those words come from other people. But the words that we use with ourselves are the death by paper cuts. And those are the ones that lead ultimately to the suicide attempts that dictate those actions, right? So we have to be very conscious of our self-talk, because that then dictates the actions that we will follow up with, right? Which then, those on a daily basis dictate the habits, which ultimately dictate our destiny. So if we want to change the man that we are at the center of this mastery cycle to become the man that we know we're capable of becoming, it all starts up here. It's that mindset, feeds the self-talk, dictates the actions. So that's really what the mastery cycle is to me. And I don't think that there is a finish line to it. It is, if you want to change who you are, you have the capability to do that. Put that new desired person, that desired being at the center of this, and ask yourself, what will it take through my thoughts, words, and actions to become that man? And then start acting as if you are.
Man, I love that. You actually harped on something that I talked to my wife about. She's so hard on herself about it, just like physical appearance and things like that. And I always tell her, I'm like, your self-talk sucks. If you had a friend who talked to you the way that you talk to yourself, you guys wouldn't be friends.
Yeah, you punch him in the face.
It's like, you want to be friends with yourself, right?
Yeah.
Like, you got to be better. And when you said that, man, that really hit home, because I think we're all a little guilty sometimes. We all beat ourselves up. We all, kind of overdo it a little at the time and place for ourselves. But yeah, anyways.
Yeah.
There's been so much research too on how positive self-talk, like the greatest athletes, the greatest, all these people, they tell themselves, like, personally, I'm very fortunate in this regard. My grandfather told me, I was very competitive in Taekwondo, and, I was pretty young and nervous. And he was like, I want you to wake up every day and tell yourself like 100 times that you're going to win that tournament, or you're going to win at the Junior Olympics and all that kind of stuff. And he like made me just like a mantra. And I did. I won a lot. And I think that was a huge part of it, is because, like, in my head, I didn't get my own way. I just went out there and competed, and I was at my full potential. There's been so much research, and I don't have all the stats to quote or whatever, but high performing athletes and musicians and all this kind of stuff, those who exercise positive self-talk operate at the highest level. And it's not a coincidence. They're all doing it. And it's not just because they're the most physically fit or the most musically talented. Like, they're all good, right? Like, if you're in the NFL, everyone's in the NFL, they're all the 0.1% of human beings physically gifted enough to play football at that level, right? So to be that much better, every little tweak, every 1% here and there, but self-talk is probably 10% or more of it, right? when you're stacking up all these little things you can do.
Mhm.
So just on the flip side of that, the positive angle of it, by making that a system that you do on a daily basis,
Yes.
you are setting yourself up for success before you even head out the door for work or whatever it is.
Well, there's really interesting research on how to do it too, right? I mean, when we talk to ourselves, it shouldn't be in the first person is actually what the research shows. Going back to your Olympic studies and these professional athletes and very successful people, what they find is that the athletes that pull themselves out and speak to themselves in a third person manner, and they've done this with students and overcoming anger and pulling themselves out of the situation, is really interesting. Those who speak to themselves in the first person have a really hard time separating themselves from the emotion that the situation causes, right? And therefore kind of get engrossed in it. Whereas if I were to talk to myself, Alex, you can do this. Alex, you can overcome this. Alex, you have the tools to go and do this. It's as if a champion is speaking to you, right? As
Yeah.
if a third party cheerleader is helping root you on from that
Right.
subjective spectator perspective, which actually then leads to greater outcomes. So, one of the other things that I teach in regards to the mastery cycle is envision the best version of you at the center of that 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now. How would that man speak to you right now? What would he tell you? How would he address you? And that is how we should speak to ourselves to amp ourselves up. Alex, you can do this. You've got this, man. Believe in yourself because I believe in you. If you want to become the man you know you're capable of becoming, you have to believe in yourself like the best version of you does. And, for those of us or for those who may not be religious or anything, I often think of my dad this way. We as Christian men, we think of heaven, right? So what would that heavenly figure say to me? How would he speak to me? But even for those that aren't religious, what would the best version of you look like on your deathbed? What would he have accomplished in this life? What is it going to take to become that man? How would he speak to you now? What would he tell you to do? Like the religion, the spirituality doesn't necessarily have to keep you from having this future conversation with yourself. It needs to be had all the time. And it needs to be had in such a way that when you are on your deathbed, whether you're going to heaven or whether you think you're worm food, you have no regrets here because you are proud of the life that you lived. So how is that man going to speak to you and motivate you to stay disciplined enough to keep acting towards becoming that person? That is how our self-talk should be. Justin, to your point, not always the case. Mine sucks sometimes, and I have to catch myself all the time. Alex, fix it. Right. But even that needs to be uplifting. It can't be like, Alex, you worthless piece of garbage. Your self-talk is just terrible. Even that has to be fixed.
Well, it's funny. Michael Jordan, I think, said it, but he said there's a massive difference between positive thinking and wishful thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And,
I love that.
that's something that a lot of people don't differentiate a lot of the time. And you really need to stop and think like positive thinking is the key to, growth and all the other things, whereas wishful thinking is something that doesn't happen. And if I remember correctly, the quote he said after that was, some people want it to happen, some wish it would happen, others make it happen. So when you're thinking positively, you have to think you're going to make it happen. You have to self-verbalize it. So yeah, I think that's a topic that we can go on and on about. But
on and on. Yeah.
But Michael
that
Jordan,
beats the action, right?
he willed some of the craziest things to happen. So I just thought he was a good example of that. So
Yep. Absolutely.
I'm curious, Alex, if you've heard of the book called The Alter Ego Effect.
I've heard of it. I haven't read it though.
Okay.
It's on my
interesting
list.
because a lot of what you're talking about, like envision yourself in the middle, and that is the guy talking to you. You'd probably love that book. I would go
Okay.
check that one out. But I'm worried. But the concept is you can basically, typically see it with like sporting events, but you can apply it to any aspect of your life. So for an area where you feel incompetent or scared or whatever, right? Maybe you have a trauma that's holding you back from reaching your potential in a certain area. You can create an alter ego, and you become that alter ego in those scenarios. And it's essentially positive self-talk, but that version of you or your alter ego isn't held back by your limitations, and it's all mental, and it works. And like, this is something I was really blessed with. I didn't realize I had done this throughout my whole life, really, because of something my dad did for me, and I want to share this here just because it's a good like father story. And so I was in Taekwondo, super competitive, and to make me better, my master would have me spar this kid who was older and bigger than me, and he would just wipe the floor with me. Like I was like crying and getting hurt all the time, and I was like real big into Star Wars. I was like 8. Um, and my dad sat me down and made me watch the end of Return of the Jedi, where Luke is kind of in the shadows and Darth is talking smack, and he's like, maybe your sister, is like your thoughts betray you too, and he's like, never, and comes out, and my dad was like, you are Luke Skywalker, and every time you get in there, you're gonna attack and be on offense just like he was there and beat Darth Vader. And it sounds really cheesy, but like I did, like I never lost to that kid again. And he was still 20, 30 pounds heavier than me, a year older, faster, bigger, all that kind of stuff. And it was all at me. It was fear. I was gripped by fear that I was not sparring in a way I was capable of. And then from that moment, like every time I walked onto a mat to spar, I was Luke Skywalker. That sounds super cheesy or whatever, but so you can like play with it too. Like I could be George Skywalker or whatever. But a lot of what you're talking about is that same concept where we lie to ourselves. So it's like brain. It's people like, oh, it's mind control. Well, everything is mind control. So mind control yourself with positive things as opposed to negative things, right? Don't hold yourself down. Lift yourself up. And we're our own worst enemy so often. It's crazy.
It is. Yeah. It reminds me of Brandon, do you want to say something too? Because I'm again long-winded.
No, I was just going to say this all just shows self-doubt, and I know that's something that you cover largely in your process, because self-doubt can resurface in all kinds of stages of life, right? And so I guess my question to you would be, what strategies do you recommend for maintaining self-confidence and eliminating self-doubt over the long term?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Have you guys heard the term and the tool name to tame? No? Okay.
I have not.
So name to tame is given to us by Dan Siegel. I believe he's out of Harvard. And it was actually a tool that my mom gave to me as a kid. And name to tame essentially allows us to tame through naming our negativity. So Brandon, to your point, how do I overcome self-doubt? Well, one, I want to recognize I am not those thoughts, because that's really where it starts, right? So as we name the negativity within, we can now look at it as a third-party perspective. And have you guys heard the story of the two wolves, Tale of the Two Wolves?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, they're two wolves fighting for our souls within, for those who haven't heard it. One is the evil wolf, who is greed and anger and frustration and all the negative emotions that we have. The good wolf within is love, hope, faith, charity, all the good things that we have and the person that we want to be. And the one that wins is the one that we feed. Right. And I love that. And the way that we can take charge of that to overcome the self-doubt is, one, name that evil wolf within. I call mine Buster because he's constantly busting my chops. My mom gave him that name when I was a kid. So whenever those doubts come up, it's, hey, I recognize where this is coming from, right? I don't want to bottle up the emotions, as we talked about. I want to recognize where they're coming from. Perhaps recognize maybe what has triggered them. Hey, Buster, this is coming from you. Talk to me for a second. What's happening? And then I'm going to shut the conversation off. Buster, I'm not having this conversation with you anymore. I am not my negativity. I'm not letting you take charge. I'm pushing you out. Okay, Alex, now what? And this goes back to, George, to your point, like, give that positive version of you, that alter ego, a name. I call mine Alexander Wolf after my grandmother, Shirley Wolf. Like, that is the best version of me. So, okay, Alexander Wolf comes in. He's like, what are you going to do now? Because I believe in you. You are not your negativity. So now let's make a plan. And that's where that self-talk comes in, that then leads to the positive action. So name to tame is a negative. And then that positive part is the name to aim, which is, I think, something really, really important. Because if we don't have a target to aim towards, how do we know which actions to take? So when it comes to the overcoming self-doubt in the long run, know who that man looks like, know who that person looks like to you, and aim towards him. And then, as we talked about, track those steps and that progress towards becoming him, and see your progress on a daily basis to do that. And then it goes hand in hand, is doubt is a natural thing for us that we experience, right? We are negatively predisposed just through evolution, right? The negativity is so potent. It's kept us alive for hundreds of thousands of years. They actually have a ratio called the 3-to-1 ratio. It takes 3 positive experiences to overcome 1 negative. That's just the potency of negativity. So now we recognize that and just say, okay, that's who we are as humans. We're predisposed to
I've
be
even heard it
negative.
as high as like 20. Like if you
And
say
I'm
something
sure
mean
it
to your
can
wife
be.
or something, you got to do like 20 positives to
Yeah.
balance the scales on that.
I'm sure it can be, depending on where it's coming from and who
Right.
you are genetically, right? The happiness equation too. Have you guys read that book and heard of that one? So that one says that 50% of our happiness is dictated by genetics. And I could say, just based on what I've experienced, I'm not the happiest dude naturally. 10% is based on external factors, 40% is internal tools that we have, internal perspective. So we really have 40% of the control there, right? So as we recognize that, just again, across common humanity, we're more predisposed to the negative. Recognize that's just who you are. Don't feel bad about it. We all have negative thoughts. That's okay. That's natural. So now rather than giving into oh, Alex, start doubting yourself of, man, I'm so negative. I can't believe I would do that. Just change it. Start what I like to call is doubt your doubts. Those doubts come up. Where's that doubt coming from? Why would I think that? This is telling me I'm doubting my capabilities. I'm going to doubt that and say, no, I don't doubt my capabilities anymore. I'm doubting the doubt there. I can do this. And then allow that name to aim character to come in and say, okay, here's how you overcome it. So it's a lot of tools that are intertwined into one. And again, I know long-winded answer there, Brandon, but starve out the evil wolf, feed the good wolf, drive towards that best self, track it on a daily basis, and doubt your doubts. If I could summarize it.
Beautiful. And I think the word you spoke of being present, being your primary word. For me, outside of that, it's intent. Just like we were discussing with suicidal ideation, it's intent. You have to have intention or intentionality in every single aspect of your life. And if you are purposefully intent, like you would be in a negative way, but in a positive way, then you're going to hit anything that you go after, especially if you're following it with discipline. Your intent with discipline, like that's the hardest thing that I've had to struggle with. And so when I push with intent, then I usually it overrides my doubts. And then I see, you get those small wins, and those small wins get the medium-sized wins, and you just keep snowballing, right? And so that's usually what helps me too. But man, that's a beautiful answer. I love that.
I'd argue there are no small wins. They're all wins.
I like
Shavings
that
made a
too.
pile.
Don't, because maybe that one quote little win you get is the only one you get that day. So don't downplay it. That's
they all
something
count.
I do, but yeah.
Amen.
Good segue about starving out the bad wolf, feeding the good one. So let's go into nutrition a little bit. We've talked to several people about power of fitness. I think our audience is pretty well aware of how we feel on that one, but nutrition haven't really gone into. We've had one guest maybe, but I love, I'm going to read a quote from you, and then I just want you to kind of expand on how nutrition is so important, especially for when it comes to mental health, not just looking good. So you say our food should be our medicine and our medicine should be our food. I think that's actually a quote of someone else that you had on your website.
Aristotle,
maybe.
I believe.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So can you expand for us and for our audience why a good nutrition plan is not just about looking good naked, and it is probably more important for mental health?
Yes. So personal story and why I'm so passionate about this. I've always been one of those sick kids. Like I saw the witch doctor and went on these special diets when I was a kid, and was poked and prodded and all that. And when I was 21, was diagnosed with Crohn's, and I approached that just strictly through food. Fortunately, it's very minor comparative to what other people have. I still have everything intact, haven't had anything removed, but I still go into flare-ups if I don't take care of myself. So I am very dedicated and disciplined when it comes to my nutrition. And what I want to caveat is everybody is different. What we're learning now with nutrition is there is no one way to eat, right? Counting your macros may work. Keto may work. vegetarianism may work, veganism may work for you, the carnivore diet may work for you, right? Everybody has their own thing. That's what I'm going to caveat with. But why it's so important for mental health. Your gut is your second brain. During our production, as we're growing as a fetus, our brain and our stomach share the same tissues. 90% of our serotonin, which is the happy hormone, is actually produced in the gut. So if we don't have proper gut health, our anxiety, depression, self-doubt, all those things that I'm dedicated to help people overcome takes a massive hit. So the hunger hormones, ghrelin, we have all these things that lead to triggers, right? Hunger, if you know the 12-step program, HALT, HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Hunger is a massive trigger for people fighting demons in here. It leads to, what our abusive behaviors will be. And that's because our hunger hormone is attached greatly up here as well.
Yep.
It comes to our energy as well. If we're tired, we're going to have massive crashes, which then lead to further mental abusive behaviors, right? If we're constantly having insulin spikes, if we're constantly having massive crashes, if we're not sustaining our caloric intake enough to give us enough energy to be able to fight these things in here. I forget who said it. Maybe it was Freud, who said, when we're tired, we lose to the demons that we had previously overcome. All of these things are really, really important. And so our nutrition plays directly into that. And we're finding through new studies that are coming out every year the importance of that and what plays into that, right? High protein intake, watch your carbohydrates, good fats, and how that feeds the brain and how the hormones are balanced between the brain and the gut. The gut biome, man, is something that we're really starting to wrap our arms around and the importance of it. So many important hormones live in our gut that play into our self-doubt, anxiety, and depression. So your nutrition, whatever that may be, needs to be on point. And I would caveat too, whatever it is, watch your sugar intake, watch the spikes, watch the crashes, watch your dairy intake as well, because we're seeing a lot of the hormones that are coming into that dairy intake, right? So I'm not saying don't have it, but be careful with it. Watch the glutens, because that is, highly processed now. Watch the seed oils. Those things are having, some pretty detrimental effects on our gut biome as well. So like those, and then of course alcohol, right? That's a depressant in and of itself. So if you're dealing with any of those things, I don't drink. It just feeds demons, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it. So anyway, long story short, our gut is our body's second brain. And so if we're thinking like, oh, I only have to do things that take care of my head, that is absolutely not the case. We have to take care of our guts if we're going to simultaneously take care of our heads.
Yep.
I'm gonna steal that phrase, man. Our gut is our second brain. That's so good.
Yeah.
It's massive.
And what's crazy is there's research of like fecal matter transplants, and it's coming from somebody that's very healthy, very happy, and it's going into a suicidal person, and the person is just a completely different person. And it's because that gut biome is completely changed. And, I did an extensive study on antibiotics. Antibiotics will absolutely put you in a state of depression. So men, when you're taking antibiotics, you need to take a probiotic. And I'm not talking about one that you have to refrigerate, because if you have to refrigerate it, the second it hits your stomach, it's gone. About 1% of that makes it to your gut. You need to get one that is a spore biotic-based probiotic, because the spores actually make it through the stomach acid and through your body's higher temperature and gets into your gut. And then that microbiome becomes healthy again. Because basically an antibiotic is a nuclear bomb to your gut biome, and you're literally destroying it. And so the food, I call it the pharmacy. When you're not eating processed, you're not eating high sugar or soys or oils or any of that stuff, and you're eating just clean, like 70% of your plate should be fruits and vegetables and natural things that come from the ground that are organic as possible. Man, I'm telling you, you're just living in a whole nother world. Your health is it's crazy.
It is, man. There's a great book called Brain Energy by Chris Palmer, who is he out of Stanford? I forget where he's out of, but he's a psychiatrist there. And long story short, and this when I first heard about it and then read the book, blew me away. He's not saying like a certain percentage of mental health issues are caused by gut. What he is saying is that every mental health issue, from depression to bipolar to multi-personality to schizophrenia, can be reversed within our gut. That is how powerful our gut, and I see that face too. I had the same thing. I was like, wait, what? That is how powerful our gut biome is and how intimately it is tied into our brains. Our gut biome is massive. So our nutrition, really, when it comes to the self-doubt, anxiety, depression, and everything else, is extremely important for our mental health. And then, of course, I'm a big believer, and you are what you consume. And I'm not just talking food, but media, everything. And I'm also a believer that if you are to live the highest level of being, which is a spiritual existence, if you want to tap into a higher power, again, call it God, call it life, call it the universe, call it energy, whatever you want. How are you supposed to tap into that if you're constantly in brain fog? How are you supposed to tap into that and communicate with that if you cannot control what you're putting into your body? How are you supposed to control what you are putting into your mind, into your spirit? Our self-discipline when it comes to our nutrition, and this is actually, I don't call it diets, I call it nutritional discipline. You pick your nutritional discipline so that you can have discipline everywhere else, because the first thing and one of the easiest things that we can track is our food. It's our fitness and it's our food. And so if we're not tracking what we're putting into our bodies, how then are we going to grasp what we can put into our minds and what we can put into our spirit? So tracking your nutrition as a discipline is really a segue and an entry tool to tracking everything else and being aware of what you're putting into your body as a whole. And I think that mentality itself is really important, because we need to be more aware of what we're consuming as a whole.
It's kind of funny. I got a question for y'all, and I want to see who can answer this question. Do you know what other biome is directly related to the gut? I'll give you a hint. It's where your food comes in. Your oral.
Oh,
your oral health. So my wife's a pediatric dentist. I forgot to tell you that before we started, Alex. So I learned something from her in her dental school, that not only can your oral health affect your gut biome can affect your oral health. They're like seriously directly linked, and they can lead to like gum disease if you have poor, gut biome and you don't have a good nutritious diet, or if you eat a lot of sugar. So that's why you were talking about nutrition. I don't think people realize how much nutrition actually affects different parts of the body. And it's so interesting that, each one of those can feed different parts of the body and the brain and everything else. So it's just something neat that I actually knew for once. So I had to share it.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Learn something new every day. I didn't know that. And I need to, take better care of my oral health anyway. So more motivation for me.
Yeah.
That's great.
And it's crazy. Just for all you parents out there, a little free advice. Make sure you're brushing your kids' teeth after milk. Don't give them anything in the middle of the night unless it's water, because what you don't realize you're doing is causing, more decay and causing a lot of the issues. And that's why my wife's in business, is because people give their kids something to placate them while they're, upset or hungry in the middle of the night. They'll give them juice, or God, I've even heard of Coke, which is crazy to give a kid. But, milk is bad for that as well. And you also have something in your mouth called caries. It's why you're not supposed to kiss your own children on the mouth. You share what you've had for a lifetime to your children. And
well, no one here is Tom Brady, so we don't have to worry about that.
I had no idea about any of that.
Oh my God, I had no clue you were gonna say that. But yeah, like people don't realize it's called caries, and it goes as soon as anything. You kiss your kid on the lips, guess what? They just got the same bacteria that you've had for a lifetime that can give them oral decay, gum disease, all these other issues they were never susceptible to. They now have the chance to get. So that's just a little FYI for all you parents.
Well, don't do it because it's creepy.
Yeah, well, that too. But
that's reason enough.
I get it. Like if your kid's like a few months old and they're like, But yeah, like just little food for thought. Oral health is just as important, and nutrition can 100% help that as well. So
sorry, Brandon, do you have something else?
Yeah, I was just going to say there's you mentioned a book. There's another book, Dr. Mark Hyman, Forever Young. goes through a lot of this stuff so eloquently. And it's such a fascinating book because, again, it touches on the gut biome. It touches on fungus growth inside the body and how you can get rid of that, like candida or candidiasis and that kind of stuff. And so there's a lot of factors that we don't consider that truly affect us in our mental health. So.
Yeah, again, it's all so intimately intertwined. I saw this really interesting study the other day. They gave children oatmeal, steel cut oats, and then an omelet for breakfast. And they wanted to compare how the hunger hormones were released in the brain, how insulin led them to be hungry, and what they ate the rest of the day. And then, so they gave them these things, they locked them in a room and studied their behavior. And the kids that had oatmeal for breakfast, or carbs, right? Insulin spike, very simple oatmeal, ended up eating 81% more than those kids that had eggs and for the omelet. And then they ended up eating something like 50% more than those that had the steel cut oats, which is a much slower, more complex carbohydrate. So I know that a lot of us, again, going back to if you want to be present, you need to be proud of your presence. Part of that is how you look. You need to be confident in how you look. And again, George, to your point, it's not just about looking sexy naked and all those things. That's a byproduct, right? Or that is the outcome that will be achieved as you take care of yourself. But if you want to be present in a room full of people and not worry, oh, what is everybody else thinking of me? That is part of it. Like, let's be honest. You want to look good in your own skin. You want to feel confident. That is how we overcome the self-doubt of, oh, people are judging me. I'm just going to stay home and I'm not going to voice my opinion because I think people are thinking about me. And so recognizing what we eat and when we eat it then plays into the further behavioral patterns of eating, leading to either weight loss or weight gain, energy maintenance, all of those things is really important. Because look, I'm a proud anti-dad bod club member, right? Like that's just a personal thing for me. Yeah, there it is, right? And again, I'm not saying you have to have a six pack. Everybody has a different body type. I'm well aware of that. But if you want to be present, be proud of your presence. And part of that mental proud of presence is being confident in your skin. And we can laugh about that all the way home, but seriously, people are self-confidence. First thing is what you see in the mirror.
Yep.
That plays a huge part in it.
It kind of baffles me. We have to actually have this conversation that like the dad bod is not good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, pull 100 guys and say if you could flick a switch and have better looking muscles overnight, would you do it? I think 100 of 100 guys are going to say, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, so don't deceive yourself on that one. If that's a blind spot for you, if that's a plank in your eye that you're just like, oh, well, I don't really need to get fit because, that's not really important for being a better dad or whatever. It's like, well, one, you're just robbing yourself of mental health, like we talked about. But also, I mean, what kind of example are you setting? Is that really the example you want to set? Is that really the legacy you want to leave? Now, it's not everything, right? Fitness isn't everything. If you go and just be the jack dude and that's all you are, then that's still one dimensional. Just like being only the smart guy and not the fit guy is also one dimensional.
Yep.
But a balance, and like you said, yeah, the goal isn't to be a competition bodybuilder, but get in health, not shape.
Yeah.
Be physically healthy is, in my opinion, should just be table stakes.
Well, we didn't really talk about it too much, and maybe we save it for another episode or something. But the University of Australia, just at the beginning of this year, came out and expressed how taking care of yourself physically with fitness and exercise is 1.5 times as effective as leading medications and therapies to overcome depression and anxiety. So again, this isn't just about looking good. It is about mentally feeling good. And I will harp on this all day. If you want to mentally, emotionally, and spiritually feel good, you cannot neglect the physical, because the physical is the gateway to be able to achieve those things. You're not going to be able to be mentally, emotionally, and spiritually fit if you are not physically, because the brain fog is going to get in the way. You're not going to have the energy. You're not going to be able to control your thoughts, your words, your actions that then dictate the destiny that you want if your physical fitness is not being addressed on a daily, being addressed on a daily basis. Again, you don't need a six-pack. That's not what this is about. It's about proving yourself right, that you are worthy of taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
That is the act of physical fitness, is you are taking the time out of the day saying, hey, I am worth taking care of. I am worth saying I'm done with work. I'm worth saying I need a break from family, to say I need to take care of myself. That is what this is about, man. So please give yourself the ability to say you are worthy to be taken care of, if by nobody else, then by you. And of course, that always begs the question, if you're not going to take care of yourself, why would anybody else?
Yeah.
So think about that, guys, that it's not just about the six pack.
Right.
It's about the
Well,
mental
and so
six-pack.
it's not just the mental too. So if you're less conditioned, your body doesn't work as well. You start to get nerve pain, all that kind of stuff,
Yes.
chronic pain, add stress. Like it's a negative cycle that keeps spiraling. And so for me personally too, like there were a couple years where I like kind of, I wasn't like overweight or anything, but I had not been training to sustain my body. And so old injuries, stuff from the military, all that kind of stuff started really nagging. My back pain got really, really bad. Sitting's bad for us.
Mhm.
Constant chronic pain was raising my tension, raising my stress. I was irritable, short. Like it has negative effects that span way beyond how you look in the mirror. And when I started getting back to, um, a daily routine, like you were talking about, to worry about my long-term health and longevity and rehabbing injuries and things like that, my pain is way lower. Like I just feel better. Not from like oh, look how good I look. I feel younger,
Mhm.
feel better. Like I'm
Yep.
working better. My body moves better now. So like you're just doing yourself a favor by
Yes.
getting in a routine like that. So I know Justin had something on this too. I want to kick it over to him.
Oh, I just was going to say something I'd read about recently. It's the most interesting thing I think I've ever read about. It's it's on PubMed. You can go and find it. I'm trying to remember the exact name of the article. I'll try to find it. We can post it. But long story short, the South Koreans in USC found a hormone they're calling the exercise or miracle hormone. It directly affects metabolism. It affects your muscle and bone growth and density. It literally, so essentially what it is this is supposed to combat everything bad in your body. Fatigue, it's supposed to be like the ultimate antidepressant. It's a natural antidepressant that's stronger than any drug on the market. It's just unbelievable, some of the key health benefits that they found from this, and it's only done during like rigorous exercise.
Mhm.
And so this was just discovered like in the last few years, and they just finally came out with the study on it. It's pretty and it's pretty and I guess amazing is the word I was looking for. Sorry, there's another word I was looking for, but I couldn't think of it. I do that a lot. But long story short, I would say go and try to find this. I want to say I think the hope molecule is what Brandon was saying.
Okay.
Something
I've
else
heard
that's
of
known
that
as
term.
Yeah,
it's
find that
dive into that.
article so we can put it in
we
the
need to share it.
description of this. But
It's
yeah, I'm really
unbelievable.
curious to see like at what, when you say hard exercise, like to what level of
Mhm.
stress do you have to peak at to, and that's gonna
Yeah,
be
define
it's gonna be
hard.
relative, right? Because if you're a deconditioned person, doing 20 push-ups is gonna be kind of hard. If you are in great shape, 20 push-ups is not hard. So it's like I'm curious, is it a heart rate thing?
So the tested subjects were 160 beats per minute
Mm.
for at least 4 minutes.
Okay, so it's a pretty good
At
sustained
least
rate
4
of
minutes.
For at least 4 minutes. But I mean, you can get that from working out. You can get that from running. I mean, that's not a
squats.
Yeah.
hard.
No.
Yeah, I mean, if you actually challenge yourself to what you're supposed to do anyways,
Yeah,
concentrate
totally.
on muscle groups, yeah, you're going to get that or close to that. I'm sure you can get it with
Interesting.
less, but they were just saying that, the test groups and stuff, that
Yeah.
was the primary, that's where they found the most concentration of this hormone. So it's pretty interesting that your body and its cells can literally create something that can combat everything negative in your life that can affect you. So
Yeah.
it's
There
just
you go.
awesome. But
Exercise is the best
exercise.
medicine.
yeah, so we'll move on from that. I guess the last question we really had for you is just one we really ask all guests, and this one's kind of off topic, but what's a story or something from your journey and fatherhood that you just really want to share with other dads that just kind of hits home and that you instantly think about when you think about being a dad?
Oh man, that's a great question. Hmm. I don't know if it's necessarily a story as much as it is a chapter of life that I'm in. Because, I've got a 5-year-old, and I can't believe that she's 5. I've got a 3.5-year-old. I can't believe she's 3.5. I've got a 1-year-old. I cannot believe that she's 1, and we're pregnant with a 4th. And it's our last one. And I cannot believe how quickly time is going. Time as a parent is a bit of a paradox because I see myself as the same person that I was when I had my first baby, right? I'm 27, 28 years old. I don't see myself as I'm 33. And yet I look at my oldest and I think, "Oh my gosh, time has passed. You are 5. You're in kindergarten. You are growing so much. And time is flying by." And I think, as I look at this chapter in my life, I recognize the importance of being present because it will fly by if we don't stop and take the time to be here with our kids. And so I don't know that I could necessarily think of one story in particular as much as this phase of I can't believe it's slowly slipping past already. And it is going by too quickly. In fact, and I think that that's a double-edged sword, right? I love watching my kids grow, but I just want to shake them and be like, "Stop growing so fast." Because I know as soon as, they get their teen years, having 4 girls, or I think we're going to have a 4th girl, it's going to be crazy for me. Um, but I recognize that I can get lost in my purpose to change the world and decrease suicide rates and try and make everybody better and build a community that is powerful and uplifting to really impact the world. But I can't use that as a justification to not be present with my own family. I have to tell myself every day, "Alex, do not build a community at the expense of your own because this is going to be over soon. It's gonna fly by." And as I view myself on my deathbed, the largest regret that I will have is neglecting my family. And so the thing that I would point out the story for the fathers is, man, be aware of the time that's passing because it is moving way too quickly. Watch Bluey, go sit on the couch and cuddle, go coach their soccer team, go get ice cream with them, stop, turn all this stuff off. I'm going to go and jump in bed with them after this, even if they're sleeping, just be there, because it just goes by too fast, man. I think that's the one thing that comes to my mind when I think of like, man, it's awesome to be a dad is, it, they won't always need me. That's going to be over sooner than I recognize. So
Man.
sorry if that wasn't a direct answer.
No,
but that's
that
what comes
was
to mind.
I couldn't have answered that better myself. And I'll have to say,
Great.
just to emphasize, being present is 100% it, but time is absolutely a thief. And
Mhm.
I guess you really said the best advice I was ever given. It was given to me by my own father, which was stay present in the moment because you're gonna blink and your kids will be adults. And I saw a crazy thing on Instagram the other day. It was a reel, and it was very sad. It hurt my heart because it was this guy. He was a child psychologist talking about how I think the actual statistic was by the time they're 12 years old, you've spent
Oh, yeah.
90% of the time you will spend with them
I saw that.
by that day. I was like, oh my god, like
Man.
why?
Yeah.
That
Only
hurts.
got 4 years
90%,
left.
90% of their life has been spent with us, or the time that they will spend with us in that time is by age 12.
Yep.
Like,
I will just to raise the mood a little bit, Alex, to encourage you. You're stated man of faith on that.
Yes.
So Brandon's oldest, I think, is 9 and mine's 8. So we're a little bit ahead of you in terms of kind of like, oh man, the time's flown by. My wife and I actually were laying in bed last night talking about this exact thing and kind of lamenting a little bit, oh, she doesn't missay words anymore.
Mhm.
She says everything correctly. And, we're at that point where she's not a little girl anymore. She's kind of a big girl and pretty independent and all that kind of stuff. And, I kind of just reminded my wife too that she's not really ours in the first place, right? She's God's.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
we're kind of just stewarding her. And the whole point is for her to become a woman and to move out and to have her own family one day. And so as painful as it is personally, it's also kind of the mission and the reward of, if we do it well, they're going to go out and, it'll hopefully be tenfold from our little slice of the thing. So, but yes,
Amen.
enjoy every minute while it's there, especially the times when you're tired or feel like you have something more important to do. Um, just capitalize on being dad while you are. And I've never regretted telling something else no to pick
Mhm.
my daughter. And like you, that I think that would be my biggest regret too, is if on my deathbed I felt that I had built things or communities at the expense of my family. Um, and I think in the world we live in, that's a lie that a lot of people have been sold, is go chase this or that and not family. And it is a lie. It's an empty lie. And you may not have riches, earthly riches or whatever, but the rewards that you'll have, this is for all the dads, by showing up as dad now while they're young and while you have a say in the matter, you will never regret that. No matter whatever else happens in your life, you will always be glad that you did that. So, Alex, I appreciate the very candid kind of response to that question. Normally, it's a little lighthearted, but I think it's important to drill in on how real it is. So, thank you for sharing that with us, and also thank you for sharing your whole story, and not the whole story, but a lot of what you've been through, and just being real. Because isolation for men is the enemy, and I think what you're doing is really healing that wound for a lot of people.
Oh, I appreciate that, George. I appreciate all you guys giving me the time, um, and let me be open, right? I think the vulnerability that I try to express is really in tandem with the empathy that I try and share too. Like, look, life is hard. I'm going through a stage right now where I'm, everything is great and I'm still having a hard time. And like, that's okay. That's just part of life. Um, I love what you guys are doing. We need strong fathers. We need strong men. We need good examples. We need guys to be the band of brothers that we all need. We can't do this alone. Life is way too freaking hard to do this alone,
Yes.
man. Like, knock that off. Throw the pride away and just like be okay raising your hand. Be like, I need help, man. Even if it's
Yep.
just a shoulder to lean on, I need help. And that's okay, guys. Like, we're all that way. So again, I appreciate what you guys are doing because it allows for us men to come together and recognize that we
Yeah,
need it.
man. Well, we're happy to have you on and kind of spread the message. So before anyone goes, keep listening in. Alex, where's the best place for people to find you? Is it your website? Is it Instagram? What's all the places?
Yeah. So first place is just Instagram, Alex Wassom. On Instagram, I've got alexwassom.com as a landing page. Strongerthanyourpain.com is more of where the details are found. And I'm starting another company with my buddy called Wolf Life Consulting. It's after my grandmother Shirley Wolf, and that's where I'm going to be doing my online courses and group coaching directed at men to go over all these things. I'm going to teach the mastery cycle, how to ascend the inner mountains of mastery, how to take care of yourself physically, mentally, spiritually, intuitionally, all those things. And then how to forge the optimal you. What does that future you look like? How do you put that man in the center of the mastery cycle? Act as if you're that person now, control the thought, words, actions. All of that is coming in the new year. So keep an eye out for that. I'll share that with you guys. But again, just trying to build a community like you guys are doing here so that we can be better men and recognize, I'm a big believer, strength for you is a starting point. Strength for two is the end goal. And I appreciate you guys allowing me to share this with you. So
Of
thank you.
course, man. Well, we appreciate you coming on and being real and
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's all I know
digging
how to
into.
do, man.
Yeah, well, that's the what we should all do, right? Live without pretense. So I love it, man. Thank you so much. I love your heart for just being genuine and for helping others, and we need more of that. So thanks for bringing on some positivity and helping others. So with that said, please do us a favor. whatever podcast you listen to, whether it's Google, Spotify, Apple, whatever. Go ahead and leave us a review, hopefully 5 stars, and subscribe to YouTube and all our other channels on Instagram and whatever else. So appreciate you all. All right, dads, enough talk. Let's get climbing. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Present Fathers Podcast. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Spotify to catch all of our amazing episodes. We will see you in the next one.